you know, all of the fighting and squabbling in the Middle East, all the fighting and killing and squabbling in South Africa, all the fighting and killing and squabbling right here. See, a drop of a hat. White supremacy could make black people just wade on in. You see, if those, if 1/10 of the necklaces that were put around black people in South Africa were put around a white person, white supremacy in South Africa would be on, definitely on the way to being over. You see, but we still, we are in hate with ourselves and in awe of the power of white supremacy. And so we have to understand that, so we begin to check ourselves. Wait a minute, my inclination is to fight this other black person, but let me check myself and turn around and go home and sit down.
Speaking of white supremacy and so-called tacky relationships, I have kind of like been exposed to that within this campus. When I first came here, I had no idea what white people were like because I come from a basically all-black city. And I came here because I figured, oh, everybody's together, it's a melting pot, everybody's going to exchange. And when I got here and I didn't see that, I didn't understand it. And I blamed myself and my people for not trying to, you know, communicate and make the effort until recently when I saw what the tacky relationship does. I was exposed to a group that I joined for business purposes, basically, and it had like 3 other black people in it. And I had problems with this group because of the way they socialized and different things that I was expected to be at. And I went before their leaders and I told them the problems I had as a black female in this group and speaking for the other 3 black people since they weren't interested. I told them that, and if I am to stay in this organization, things are going to have to change because I refuse to assimilate. I'm tired of assimilating. I assimilate in class. I assimilate every day. You know, everything on this university, basically, I'm assimilating. You know, I told them when I'm in your meetings and I go, hi, Bill, how are you? I'm assimilating, you know. I am being me and, you know, and they're sitting there and they just handled it so well and they shook their heads. And then, you know, one of the black guys called me, well, we don't feel that, you know, things are going to work out. Why not? These white people were scared of me and what I said I was going to do. The things that he said, well, you were speaking about change and they don't feel that, you know, we're ready to change. And I said, you're black, how do you feel? You're in this. You know, a year ago I wouldn't have seen it. But you're in this now. There are 2 other black people in there with you. Why don't they speak up? That's because they have assimilated so much that they don't have the black culture. They're black on the outside, but they're definitely have forgotten that they're black on the inside too.
Well, wait a minute. What's the rule? Don't fight with other black people.
I know.
I understand what you're saying. You see, in other words, the white people were causing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Basically because it was an organization under white supremacy, which means what? Supremacy and support for white people. And so you were feeling uncomfortable encountering that reality. You see, and so the fight went not continuing to fight with the white people, but the fight with the black people.
No, I was fighting with him. He brought it to me. It was like he was the messenger.
Oh,
and
well, okay.
I asked
but
him
you see
why.
what I'm saying? Don't fight with the messenger.
Yeah.
Go to the message giver. You see, but I would say, you know, again, you might just say, oh, no problem, but, you know, my code doesn't allow me to do too much socializing. But I would like to attend these meetings because I'm interested in mastering exactly how you do things. Because I think that you're very skilled and you're very knowledgeable. And I think there's a lot that you can teach me. Now, the part that you didn't say, I can bring this knowledge back to my side of the board. I think we can use this.
That was one of my main reasons for joining.
You see, so then, just even if, you know, the other black people say, relax, no, I'm not here to make anybody really uncomfortable. You see, again, but it's understanding what the lay of the land is and being able to set your priorities relative to your ultimate goal. Like my ultimate goal is the elimination of white supremacy on this planet so that we can have peace. But we won't have peace before the elimination of white supremacy. You see, we won't have justice and peace without the majority of the black or the non-white people being in a state of self-respect. You see, and checkmating white supremacy will bring that into being.
But what do we do for, the people, we have, here on this campus, our people, some of us, put it this way, some of us do feel that in order to be accepted, like you said, we must be a part of their groups. That was not my purpose, but I see many of us in these, fraternities and sorority systems, and they say, well, I don't really feel that there's a difference, and I'm treated just fine.
Well, you see, so the fact that maybe it's only one person that is interested in racism on campus. If that person understands racism so they're not moving with animosity, you see, as a matter of fact, quite the contrary, you're moving with a very high level of respect, and that's not, I think, I'm cute. That high level of respect informs me that I understand that there's racism. I am a victim of racism. All non-white people are victims of racism. The people in the fraternity and the sorority are also victims of racism. They may not understand, but that's okay. Each time I encounter them, I'm going to try to relate to them with maximum respect. You see, and that's the way I'm going to conduct myself. And so eventually, she's an interesting person. I wonder what she's interested in. Do you see, as opposed to that they all
right, exactly.
So you can take that same energy and say, gee, let me see, how am I going to learn more about racism, white supremacy, and secondarily, anything else that I may have, be inclined to study. It could be agronomy, it could be astronomy, it could be medicine, it could be whatever. You see, but if I don't understand racism, like one of the things Nina says in the code, if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. You see, what we are learning, it's just like you go on a football field. If you don't understand football, all those people running up and down, wow. But the minute you understand what the game is all about and what all those positions are, then you understand exactly and specifically why people are moving as they do. And so we have to understand. See, I say this is our task for the 21st century. 100% of black people understanding what white supremacy is and how it works. Now somebody, how does that happen? What if I see, like 100% of black people can learn the latest dance step in 5 days, all across this country. Everybody will be able to do the latest dance step at the latest party. And that's no different than learning white supremacy other than we teach each other the latest dance step. But we have to, and you don't make a person learn the latest dance step. You say, I know the latest dance step. Somebody may say, I'm not interested. And somebody else may say, well, teach me. So you don't go to the person who says they're not interested. You don't put them down. You just say, hey, I'll show you how to do it. Yes, sir.
Well, understanding that is true, how do you, in the consequences of fighting racism or have experienced direct consequences from maybe trying to get that type of information? Because I find in the community of Champaign, that's what you find. You have people who are just extremely fearful, and their fear is justified because it is a fact that the system here will attempt to deal with you accordingly for speaking out against the system. So how do you work within that framework?
Well, see, first of all, the respect. let's say somebody in a concentration camp, and the guard says, if you touch this fence, you're going to be electrocuted or you get shot. And so you can't get mad at people who decide they're not going to go up and touch the fence. You see, so that if you respect, there are people who are afraid. But the best thing that helps a person who is afraid is to see an example of courage. And so rather than you worry about what they won't do, you try to figure out what you are going to do. You. See, all by yourself. You see, where you're not demeaning the other people because you haven't gone to the max. R-E-A-D. Okay.
Right. Stefanwick,
Yeah.
we would like to know just exactly what it is that you anticipate seeing from Dr. Frances Cress Welsing this evening.
Well, number one thing, I guess, is a strong, informed black woman. As a black woman myself, I find that it's rare when we get a black female speaker on the campus. And so I think that she'll provide maybe another half of the part that we're missing, maybe, you know, the black female perspective in addition to the black male perspective. And also she has information that maybe I've never heard anyone speak on, and that might be what I would call inside information as far as the destruction of certain races that's done not overtly but covertly. So I think she has a lot of information dealing with things that are not quote-unquote talked about.
Thank you very much, Ms. Williamson. Mr. Wallace. Williams, I'm sorry. Mr. Wallace, is it possible that you can enlighten us all in what exactly it is that you hope to achieve tonight when you go here?
I want to hear some further elaboration on the Cress theory of color confrontation, how it relates to AIDS and certain things that we as black men and black women in a university environment can do to help fight against white supremacy and someday beat the beast.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wallace. Lori, after having met Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, is it possible that you can tell us what your first impressions were of her and what your feelings are about the doctor?
Oh, I haven't met her.
You haven't met her?
No.
All right, who's met her? Everybody broke on me. Your first impression of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing?
Well, I haven't had the opportunity to meet her yet, but upon listening, she has that type of...
I'd like to welcome you to the If Not Now movement's beginning of its colloquial speaker series. My name is Dino Pollack, and I'm a representative of If Not Now, and I welcome you on behalf of If Not Now to our lecture this evening. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge a couple of our elders that are in this room that we need to give due credit and deference to. I'd like to recognize Brother Fundishi Impadnishi, the African Study Group here. Brother Alexander Lynn, who's a scholar in residence at Allen Hall. And Professor Juliet E.K. Walker, our professor of history here at the University of Illinois. And any other elders that are in the room, I would like to give due credit to and say thank you this evening for coming out. I have a few announcements before we get into the meat of our program. On Monday, November 19th, in Lincoln Hall Theater at 6 p.m., Daruba bin Wahad will be here at the University of Illinois, sponsored by the People of Color and Culture Caucus of SGA. Mr. Wahad served 19 years in prison until his release earlier this year. A leader in the Black Panther Party, Daruba and the BPP were primary targets of the secret FBI counterintelligence program, COINTELPRO, aimed at neutralizing the Black Liberation Movement. In 1971, Daruba was arrested and falsely charged with the attempted murder of 2 police officers. After 2 mistrials, Deruba was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. A court recently overturned his conviction because of government misconduct. Shortly after his release from prison, Deruba addressed a rally of 200,000 in Harlem welcoming Nelson Mandela on behalf of over 100 political prisoners in the United States. So this is a brother that we very much need to go see when he comes here. On that same day, and as a matter of fact, Eleanor Holmes Norton, a good friend of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, they went to undergraduate school together in Ohio. She will be here right in this very room in Fuller Auditorium at 7:30 p.m. that same night. And she is recently elected to the D.C. delegate spot vacated by Walter Fauntleroy in Washington, D.C. So we need to congratulate her and support her when she comes here. Applications are now being accepted for the 5th Annual National College and University Student Conference to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nonviolence for a Change. The student conference will be January 17th through 20th, King Week 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia. Applications are available in 297 of the Illini Union and must be turned in by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, November 21st, 1990. This is also sponsored by the People of Color and Culture Caucus of the Student Government Association. And finally, no, I have 2 more, so bear with me. The new WBML Radio, a volunteer student workshop of the African American Cultural Program, would like to know if you are interested, are in their listening audience. The station has been in existence for 8 years and is a primary source of the best soul and dance music, featuring news, jazz, gospel, house, reggae, and rap. If you're not hooked up, get hooked up. The new WBML is located at 89.3 on your cable radio dial. For cable installations, see Paul Hutchinson in the front lobby or call 384-2500. That's 384-2500. Lastly, but not least, there will be a fundraiser Friday, November 16, 1990 from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. at the Campus Recreational Center, better known as Wimpy Gym, over there on Gregory Drive. I didn't know it was called that. Across the street from Allen Hall and Busey Evans dormitories. Proceeds will be going to the Coalition for the Relief and Resettlement and Reconstruction of Liberia. There is presently a revolutionary war going on in Liberia, and the people have been displaced and uprooted. Due to the war, the people are in great need of medical supplies, food, clothing, and any money to have these items shipped to them and to pay for other expenses for their relief. We, the members of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity and the Liberian students here at the university would like for you to support us in our effort to get relief to our brothers and sisters in Liberia. So we need to support those brothers and sisters. That is Friday, November 16th, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. at Campus Recreation Center. Now we will get into the formal introduction of the program. I want to give a short overview of what If Not Now is all about. If Not Now is a proactive political organization designed for facilitating an awareness of the culture and concerns of African Americans and other people of color. And I'm going to leave it at that because we want to move expeditiously through our program. I want to also say that this program tonight would not have been taking place if it were not for the unprecedented amount of collaboration, cooperation, and galvanization of African American organizations, etc. And I want to give due homage and credit to those organizations one by one because they did not appear on the flyer due to circumstances beyond our control. Number one, I have about 30 people here and I'm gonna move along fast, so you know how fast I talk, so I'm gonna roll. The People of Color and Culture Caucus, the YWCA, Women Working for Progress, Black Graduate Student Association, African American Programs Committee of the Illini Union Board, the Champaign-Urbana Coalition Against Apartheid, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Ebony Umoja Black Student Union, USANIA Black Student Union, OASO Black Student Union, the National Society for Black Engineers, the Minority Association for Future Attorneys, Mariama BSU, Maji BSU, the Central Black Student Union, the NAACP, the Minority Organization for Pre-Health Students, or MOPS, the Black Greek Council, Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, Dr. Dennis May and the University of Illinois Counseling Center, the Afro-American Studies and Research Program headed by Professor Alice Deck, Afro-American Cultural Program, Mr. Bruce Nesbitt and Mrs. Laretha Harmon and Kathleen Slace have been absolutely wonderful in our efforts trying to get Dr. Welsing down here. We would like to thank the African Study Group, NEA, for bringing Dr. Welsing's tape to our consciousness this semester, and we do want to give due homage to them, because without them it might not have been possible for this to occur. The Multicultural Awareness Committee of the Residence Hall Association, Odell Warren and Southern Cooking Catering Service, who has done an outstanding job of supplying us with food over at the Cultural Center for our reception, and we want to support wholeheartedly black business in Champaign-Urbana and everywhere we go. So I want to give out their phone number and help those brothers out. 359-0600 for some nice Southern, home-cooked, African food. Okay? 359-0600. Let's support those brothers and sisters. Anna Kennel and the McKinley Health Service Minority Programs Committee. We'd like to thank them. The men of Alpha Phi Alpha, we would like to thank them. And finally, but certainly not least, Association of Minority Students in Engineering. All of these people deserve a standing ovation, because we would not be here tonight, Dr. Welsing would not be here tonight, and we would be somewhere. Now I would like to introduce our illustrious speaker. But slightly before we do that, I want to show you some things on campus that might have bypassed the Daily Illini and the other credible newspaper that might be in the audience. We would like to let people see what has been going on this campus. This is, I know you can't probably see this, but I'll read it for you. It says, the KKK wants you. Don't give me that white supremacist bullshit. That's item A. Item B. Read this. This was plastered all over your quadrangle at the beginning of the semester. It says, blacks want all of their shit and half of our shit. That's 3/4 of the shit. And that's bullshit. We're getting very creative. I didn't make it up. I found this on the back of the alma mater statue at the University of Illinois, and it said, Earth's most endangered species, the white race. Help preserve it. Write or call the National Alliance. I'm giving you the name and number. The National Alliance, Box 2723, Arlington, Virginia, 22202. And here's the phone number if you got a long distance call to make. Area code 703-573-3420. Everybody need to call that number and see what type of information they got for us, because we can use it. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have an organization or somebody, an individual that can print up the If Not Now logo better than If Not Now can. And it says, global white supremacy and the KKK. Is there any connection? If not now, blacks, welfare, drugs, crime, watermelon, and fried chicken. Is there a connection? Get a fucking life. This was found under one of our members' doorsteps today. So we are all here for information and education, and that's why I'm going to introduce the lady that has come here to talk to us about this topic. Dr. Welsing was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, which is that small town of I-57. She graduated from Phillips High School so she's a product of Chicago public schools. That's right. She went to Antioch College in Ohio for her bachelor degree, and she went to Howard University Medical School, where she received her MD in 1962. She's a former professor of psychiatry at Howard University Medical School, and in 1970 she published the Cress theory of color confrontation and racism, in parentheses, white supremacy. Has appeared in several periodicals and publications, including Ebony Magazine, the Journal of African American Issues, Essence Magazine, the Journal of Healthcare in the Cities, Black Books Bulletin, and the Washington Post. She has lectured at several major academic institutions around the country, including Illinois, Michigan, Rutgers, Princeton, Cal Berkeley, Stanford, Howard, and Ohio State. She has been on TV with debating a few people that might have some of these white supremacist notions with Tony Brown, and successfully debated Dr. William Shockley on the subject of black genetic inferiority, which we know is wrong. Currently, she is in private practice of adult and child psychiatry, and she is clinical director of the Paul Robeson School for Growth and Development in Washington, D.C., and that is for the government of Washington, D.C. Commission on Mental Health Services. So please join me in welcoming one of our great sisters in this country today, speaking out for black people and for other people of color who know and who have felt the effects of white supremacy on them. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pollock, and let me begin by thanking the If Not Now organization and all of the other organizations and individuals and groups that participated in inviting me to come to the University of Illinois. I also want to say this is a magnificent audience. As far as I'm concerned, it was very cold. I was standing over in the corner freezing. And all of you have come out tonight, I'm certain, to talk about what I consider to be the most important topic, bar none, in the world today. And that is the topic of racism, and by that I mean white supremacy. If we can understand racism, and I'm certain that this audience of people, many different backgrounds, racial groups, ethnic groups, that people have complained about racism and talked about racism and cried about racism and maybe thought about racism. I believe that it is time for us to solve this very, very important topic. And I believe that if we understand racism, we can begin to also understand some of the other very significant things that concern us, such as AIDS. However, my topic tonight is a focus on racism, white supremacy, so that we can understand this problem and solve it. I look upon it as any other problem that may face a physician that is causing distress to people, be that physical distress, mental or psychological distress. That problem is to be solved. I am a third-generation physician. My grandfather, paternal grandfather, was a physician in Chicago who died in 1909. My father, deceased, was a physician in Chicago, a graduate of the University of Illinois Medical School. And so I am a third-generation physician, and as far as my family is concerned, charged with the responsibility of not only being on the planet, but participating in the solution to problems that people face, that human beings face. Now let me share with you how I became interested as a professional, as a medical professional, in the topic of racism. First of all, I come from a family that was very politically active. I grew up with a mother and father and grandparents who were always talking about the various issues that black people face, so I considered my parents to be politically astute and persons who feel that they too should participate, not just in their professions. My mother was a Chicago public school teacher, and as I said, my father was a physician, but also taking an interest in what was going beyond perhaps a narrow professional interest. So I grew up hearing topics of discussion in my home, but when I became a physician and began training in psychiatry at St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C., I did a 3-year residency in general psychiatry in Washington, D.C., and then a 2-year fellowship at Children's Hospital in child psychiatry. But when I was training in general psychiatry, there was the attitude, there were very few black psychiatric residents at the time. And the attitude on the part of the persons who were training us, their attitudes really were that black people did not have the mental capacity to benefit from psychoanalytic therapy, and that the best treatment for them would be medication and drug therapy. I did not happen to go along with that idea. And in seeking to treat not only white patients, but also black patients, when I was doing a fellowship in child psychiatry, the persons who classify themselves as white who trained me would say, Francis, you can get all of the children well, the white children as well as the black children. But when I was doing a residency in general psychiatry, there was really very little interest on the part of the physicians, the psychiatrists who were working in that setting, to really understand what was happening with the black patients. And I decided, well, this certainly was going to be a major responsibility for myself. And so as I would take a history on the psychiatric patients who were black, I realized that as they talked about their life experiences and the fabric of their lives, I said, gosh, this person is talking about some aspect of prejudice or discrimination or racism. I have got to understand much more about racism if I am going to effectively help and treat these patients. When I was an undergraduate at Antioch College in Ohio, I considered that I was a Marxist. And I had the nerve to go home one time and tell my parents, oh, the most important thing that I've learned in college is Marxism. It's a wonder they didn't withdraw the tuition. But I thought during my undergraduate years, well, maybe this issue of racism is determined by economic forces. But the more I worked with that idea, and by the time that I was training in psychiatry, that did not seem to produce the answers nor the insights that I needed as a physician in order to begin to solve these problems. And so I was looking for further insights into the issue of racism. I read everything that people wrote about racism, black people, white people. I read everything that they had to say, and I still was not satisfied. In other words, if your brain is looking for, if you have a physician and you take that physician a problem and you are distressed, if the physician doesn't have the answer immediately, I know that you hope the physician will keep seeking until they do find an answer to the problem so that you can be comforted or hopefully you can be cured. So I was looking further for an answer about racism. In 1967, I met a gentleman whose name is Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller was not a college professor. He was not a psychiatrist. He was a guard in the Bureau of Engraving in the District of Columbia, a black gentleman who had started on his own writing about racism when he was a soldier in the Korean War. He was stationed in Japan. And he said he started thinking about the United States, thinking about the terminology segregation, desegregation, the terminology that was used, and he said he began to think, this doesn't really make much sense. Something else is going on this planet. And he finally decided and came up with the concept that what was happening on the planet was that racism was a system of behavior. And it was a system of behavior evolved and developed by people who classified themselves as white. And he said they evolved this behavior for the purpose of being dominant over the people that they, meaning the collective of white people, the people that they classified as non-white. Now, mind you, the terminology white and non-white is not terminology evolved by people of color on the planet. So Mr. Fuller said he thinks that racism, let me see if I can, is this mic working? Can you hear me? Okay, Mr. Fuller said that racism was a system, and that the system was global, not just confined to Champaign, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, the District of Columbia. He said it was a global as well as local, and that the system that was evolved to have the power equation essentially of white over non-white, and that this behavior was in all areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. That it covered every single activity that people engaged in. And so I said, this is very interesting as a concept. And then the next thing that I said, but I wonder why. And this is something that psychiatrists do. We are not just content with the fact that people's behavior or a person's behavior is a particular pattern, but a psychiatric physician who may be interested in helping the person change a particular pattern of behavior, they have to understand, well, why is this happening? What is the genesis? What is the etiology? What is the causation? And so I told Mr. Neely Fuller, and I had a colleague in medicine, a gentleman whose name is Carl Hutchinson, who's also a Chicago physician. And the three of us would sit and talk about these ideas back and forth and up and down, and I kept saying, but why? And these two gentlemen would say, well, Francis, it's not necessary. This is the construct of racism, and this is the way it works, and this is what it's all about. But somehow my brain computer kept persisting and saying, but why would the behavior on this planet, why would people organize behavior based on skin color? Because, behavior can actually be organized in any way. Somebody might say, well, I think that all people who wear size 10B shoes like me ought to dominate all the smaller sizes. And if they could put that into effect, I guess that could hold. But no, behavior was organized based on people who said, well, we are white and all of these other people are non-white. And so I said, but why might they engage in that? Not just get mad, because I think that's cheap. Why would it happen? And so I thought about that for a long time. and somewhere in the vicinity of 1967, 1968, I actually was in my kitchen doing the dishes or cooking, because the brain computer is actually a laboratory. Albert Einstein didn't have a big laboratory. He used his brain computer to think about his experience and to reflect on the particular topic that he was interested in. And so out of my brain computer came this concept. And I wrote a paper and presented it for the first time in the section on psychiatry in the National Medical Association, that's the Black Medical Association in the United States. The Cress theory of color confrontation and racism. Cress is my maiden name, and so I was divorced at that time. I said, well, I'll put this on my family name, and my ex-husband wouldn't have to worry about it. What I came up with is this, that one thing that happens on this planet is that the people of color are constantly called minorities. But what is the reality on our planet Earth? The reality on our planet Earth is 1/10, if not fewer, of the people on the planet Earth have skins that are white. 9/10 of the people on the planet Earth are black, brown, red, and yellow, the so-called non-white people. And so that constant, you are a minority, you are a minority, I said, now that's interesting. See, in psychiatry, that is known as a projection. Something that a person experiences as uncomfortable about themselves, and then they lay it on the other person and say, you're it. So that was point number one. Point number two was that people who classify themselves as white were constantly saying about people who were non-white and black people in particular, you are genetically inferior. Has anybody heard that at the University of Illinois? Only a few people, is that right? See, science is about truth, if I'm not mistaken. Higher education ought to also be about truth. So there is a constant and a continuous discussion about people who are white are genetically superior to people who are non-white. And so I thought about that, and I said, well, wait a minute. Didn't I learn in biology, in high school, and in undergraduate school, and certainly in medical school, that the ability to produce these colors, black, brown, red, and yellow, in reality is what? Genetically dominant. Am I correct, ladies and gentlemen? Yes. And that the inability to produce color is not defined by Francis Welsing, but it is defined by geneticists and biologists as a genetic recessive trait. And for those people who don't have the opportunity to have higher education, it is told to them and discussed at the level of what? One drop of this black blood, meaning genetic material makes you black. So I said that the concern about genetic vulnerability or the concern about genetic inadequacy is also something that is being projected. And I said this is interesting, and beyond that, the black, brown, red, and yellow people were being told the more color you have, the uglier you are. Now, I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I'm certain that wherever people of color have grown up in the context of a social system that is dominated by people who classify themselves as white. They learn something before they learn how to read, and it goes like this. And I can be in London, England, and the people of color can recite it. I can be in San Francisco or New York or Chicago or all spots in the middle, and people can recite it. If you are black, what? Stay black. And if you are brown, stick around. And if you are yellow, you're mellow. And if you're white, you're all right. How many people have heard that? Please raise your hand so that I know that there's no retardation here. So those lessons about the more color you have, the uglier you are supposed to be, but that is in stark contrast to a very interesting aspect of behavior. And I will share it with you this way. I will tell you about my first spring at Antioch College. I went away to school when I was just 16 years of age. And my first experience coming from the south side of Chicago, and I was the only black girl in my class. Every class had 2 blacks, 1 male and 1 female. And so I was coming back from the cafeteria, this was sometime in April, and I had jeans and jacket on, and I was still cold, but the sun was out. And I saw something that stopped me dead in my tracks. I saw all of these people with their clothes off. And I truly did not know what they were doing. And I stopped on the path and I had to collect myself, and then I realized, oh, they're suntanning. So on our side of the track, we had learned the more color you have, the uglier you are. But on the other side of the track, people were taking the chance, I feel, of getting pneumonia. And then since being in medicine, I certainly know, taking the very serious chance of developing skin cancer to get that desired golden tan. And then they would say to me, Francis, now I'm your color. And a white student told me, after I started talking about these ideas, Dr. Welsing, do you realize that in the summer we compete to see who can get the darkest? George Hamilton, anyone? Time magazine, a couple of years ago, did an article on suntanning parlors. And the reporter was interviewing the people who would frequent suntanning parlors and said something to the effect of, well, don't you realize you will get cancer? And they quoted the response, and the person said, at least I will be a good-looking corpse. But all over the world, where people who classify themselves as white confronting people who have color, the people of color, and that's the vast majority of the people on the planet, have been taught to look upon themselves and to think of themselves as ugly because they have this color, and they are taught this by people who classify themselves as white. And at the same time, the people whose skins are white are trying to get the color on the QT. So I finally said, oh boy, I bet I know what's happening on this planet. I think I've got it. I think I've got it. people of color are not oppressed because they are ugly and something is wrong with their genetics. And I say, here we are on our planet Earth, and if we say this area of the world is Europe, and at a certain point in time, people got in some little boats, and they called them voyages of discovery. And what those voyages of discovery found out was all of these people are colored people. And if the men were sexually frustrated on those boats, and they waited around 9 months, they said, by Jove, all of these children look like their mothers. It didn't take a big genetic conference to discover white genetic vulnerability. And so I say that what happened next, and whether this was consciously and or subconsciously determined, the people must have thought, well, wait a minute. What if these men in all these different locations get in some boats and start moving in the other direction? Gosh, Willie Horton. We will have a problem. And so I said, oh, I understand racism. That racism is not about a moral concept. That racism is behavior evolved by the people who found themselves as the tiny minority on the planet that were genetic recessive to the majority. That the only way that they could survive genetically and not disappear genetically would be to impose domination over all of the people on the planet Earth. And so at that point, maybe whatever anger I might have had about racism, and racism is one of the greatest injustices that has ever been on the planet, because it's the tiniest number of people deciding that they must hold down and hold back the overwhelming vast majority of people on the planet. So that's got to be the greatest injustice. But I said, well, now I understand the dilemma. That this is behavior evolved for the purpose of white genetic survival or to prevent white genetic annihilation. And after I decoded that, then a number of disturbing things became clear. I remember as a very little girl, my parents were standing in our dining room in Chicago, Illinois, on the south side. And I was a very little girl because I remember being around the height of the dining room table, or just above that. And they were talking about an article in the black newspaper about a black man who had been lynched. And they were talking in the hushed tones and serious tones that adults talk in, and talking sort of in whispers where they don't really want the children to have to deal with the material. But I remember saying to my grandmother, Granny, why would they do that? And my grandmother said, some people just seem to have to act ugly. But it wasn't until I decoded the necessity for white supremacy behavior. And then I said, oh wow, I understand lynching. And I understand castration. It is perfectly logical It is absolutely perfectly logical, whether at conscious or at subconscious levels. How so? That if the issue on the planet Earth is white genetic survival, and this is what Senator Jesse Helms talked about the other day, and this is what Mr. David Duke talked about a couple of weeks ago in New Orleans in the state of Louisiana, where he received 41% of the total vote and 61% of the white vote. He was talking about white genetic survival in no uncertain terms. So that if indeed this is the fundamental issue that is sometimes talked about in the code language of you don't want quotas or you don't want welfare, but if this is the issue, then certain very specific behaviors are necessary. Because of all of the non-white people, the black people are the people who produce the highest level of melanin pigmentation. That is the pigment that causes our skin and our hair and our eyes to be dark. White people who have dark eyes have melanin. White people who have dark hair have melanin. White people who seem to be a little bit swarthy also have a little melanin. But black people have the greatest quantity of melanin, and then people who are so-called brown, then people who are so-called red, then people who are so-called yellow, and white is at the end. And so when black people learn if you're black, stay back, brown, stick around, yellow, mellow, white, right, that means that white supremacy says that the more pigment that you produce that can cause white genetic annihilation, you have to go to the back of the line. And so people are handled based on the level of melanin pigmentation that they produce. If people who are classified as black produce low levels of melanin, they might get the job of the receptionist in the front office or the teller at the bank. But make no mistake, they are also still classified as non-white. But between males and females, and even though this is a time when people speak of feminism and the equality of the sexes, that there are two sexes and we don't have the same function. That non-white females, black, brown, red, or yellow, cannot cause the same fear as black, brown, red, and yellow males. Now I might just stop and ask you why so. Or do you think that non-white females pose an equal threat to white genetic survival as non-white males? How many people think yes, they do? Oh, you're afraid to answer. How many people think that is males who pose the greatest threat, and why? Why do males pose the greatest threat? Because what? Oh, you know this.
What do you say?
And the reason that males pose the threat, whether they are white, black, brown, red, or yellow, white males do not pose a threat to white genetic survival. But males, be they white, black, brown, red, or yellow, should they desire, can impose sexual intercourse. Females, whether they are white, black, brown, red, or yellow, cannot impose sexual intercourse on a man. Am I correct? Is there any woman in the audience who thinks that she can say? And for those who are not quite certain, you know, a male can decide, I'm going to have sexual intercourse with that female. And if she resists, I may have a weapon and I can force her to. But if a female, if I decided, oh, that's the male of my choice, and he says, well, I'm tired. So I pull out my M16 rifle. And I say, you bet her. What will happen if I frighten him? If we look around the room and, you know, just look around the room and look around the campus tomorrow, you'll see a whole lot of different colored black people. Looking unlike we looked when we came from Africa. All these different colors of black people did not come about as a result of black slave women going up to the big house and forcing the slave master.
You don't have to give me that.
No, it came about because the white slave master imposed himself on multiple African women who were black. Okay, so that if I am correct in my thesis that the critical problem is white genetic survival and the prevention of white genetic annihilation, then it's one key person that has to come under control and attack. And who is that person? And where must he be controlled? Now, so I don't have to ask for a model, I'll do a diagram. Now, I thought this was nursery school anatomy, but this may be anatomy 101. No, male genitalia. And so we were talking about lynching and castration. Now, there are many things that non-white males may do. Black males may shoot a white man. God forbid, but it may happen. Stab a white man. But black males never tamper with white male genitals. But white males have found themselves, for conscious or unconscious reasons, attacking the genitalia of black men, and that is called castration. But what is the logic? That if the fear is of white genetic annihilation, then the brain computer will go straight to the genitals, and castration means specifically removing the testicles. Why remove the testicles? Why? That's a question. Because that's where the genetic material is. And in the case of black men and brown men and so-called red and yellow men, but black and brown men in particular, that is the genetic material that can cause white genetic annihilation. So I said, wow, this awful thing, I have finally understood the logic behind it. Whether I like it or not, that is the material. What is the logic that causes that kind of behavior so that it has occurred not just on one occasion, but on hundreds of occasions? So I understood that. And then, because I understood, or what I call decoding racism, white supremacy, one Sunday afternoon I was standing in my house in Washington, D.C., and it was so absolutely quiet this Sunday afternoon, and I said, gosh, it's so magnificent and quiet. What's going on? And then my brain computer clicked in, oh, wow, right. It's the ball games. And then my brain computer said, for all of the people who are preoccupied with ball games, this is not just some simple sport and entertainment. These games have very great significance. And then my brain computer kicked in. Well, my goodness gracious. In the system of white supremacy, there are actually two series of ball games. In this society and culture that says, keep your what? Eye on the ball. And what are these? See, somebody said to me, well, Dr. Welsing, where did you do your research? I research with my eyes. I look at the behavior. I look at what people say. Many of the things that they don't even think about. So if anybody has heard me in the audience talk about ball games, please don't answer and give other people a chance to think about it. What are the two series of ball games in the white supremacy system and culture, meaning the culture that has as its most fundamental concern white genetic survival and the prevention of white genetic annihilation? And the student that gets the correct answer will graduate early. What are the two series of ball games? See, you're looking at it all the time. But if somebody said, no, our system is democracy, or our system is socialism, or our system is communism, then you won't see what I'm talking about. But I say that the system is white supremacy. The system, the dominant power system on the planet at this point in time, hasn't existed always, but it exists at this point in time. The dominant system is racism, white supremacy, the system for white genetic survival. So what are the two series of ball games that are played out in this culture? Interesting science, I'll tell you. Please hold on to your seat so you don't fall out of it. The two series of ball games are big, brown, and small, white. Well, I never thought about it. Big, brown, football, basketball, bowling ball. Soccer. Somebody told me earth ball. You know, those big, huge brown balls. Small what is there? What are the ball games that the culture? What are the ball games that are played by the men that the white supremacy culture says are the most virile men? Do the most masculine men play with ping pong, golf, tennis, or baseball, or are they the football heroes? Which? The big brown balls. See, beyond that, in this culture where Willie Horton, he's going to rape me. See, the constant projection of rape, it was African women who were raped. But that constant projection that the black male wants to rape the white female. Now, mind you, I'm not endorsing rape. I'm not here talking about black people hate white people, be discouraged. That's not what I'm talking about. My object in talking about this topic that some will say is controversial or difficult is so that we can have justice and peace on the planet for all people. But we cannot have peace in the presence of racism. We cannot have peace in the presence of injustice. So I'm talking about these issues so that we can get to the bottom of this, irrespective of whether we classify ourselves as white or black or whatever color. But in this culture that has constantly projected rape onto black males, for example, the reason that black men were often castrated and lynched because somebody said he looked at a white woman. He looked at a picture of a white woman. He looked like he wanted to think about looking at her. But in this very same culture, the white female says that her ideal mate is tall, dark. In the same culture, where white males will say black stockings, black negligees, black underwear is a sex symbol. If the white lady wants to kind of liven things up, then greet your mate in a black negligee. I didn't create this. The culture created it. The same culture that says the white female, if you always want to appear dressed up, you will have your basic black dress. So, let's look at these balls and where they go. Now, hold on. That big brown football goes in some white upright legs at the end of the field. The basketball goes in white. And then there are white dancing girls in short skirts dancing on the side in very sexy outfits, and they're called cheerleaders. Am I making this up or are we together? What is the game that is played by the most powerful white males? Speak up. Okay? Now I have been given to understand. Oh, first of all, let's look at the game. Long stick. Held between legs. Trying desperately to get the little white ball. Get this discussion on racism. See, putt, 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 putt. Trying to get a hole in one. Now, I have been told that white males. Well, first of all, where does this little ball go?
Dark.
You say a little hole right in black Mother Earth. And I have been told that white males say they're not men until they have had sexual intercourse with a black lady. And I say that's what the game of golf is symbolically portraying in the white supremacy system and culture. Now, beyond that, we have another interesting game. Billiards. Pool. How is that game played?
Long stick, hit a white ball.
All these colored balls in a triangle. The psychiatrist will tell you that's a symbol of the female vaginal orifice. And all these colored balls, and then takes the triangle off. And then you have a little white ball and a long stick. And the game is all about the little white ball knocking all of the colored balls under the table. And the last ball to be knocked in is the black and ball. And the expression in the culture is, I don't want to be caught behind the eight ball, which would mean white genetic annihilation. Wow. Beyond that, what is justifiable homicide? There are no instances of black men in uniform authorized to carry weapons who have ever killed a white male and said, I thought he had a weapon. None at all. Just like in this area of the world, there has never been a white male who has been electrocuted or killed for killing a black man. Never. Not one. Never. Okay? So I say that the definition, understanding the context of white supremacy, racism, meaning white genetic survival, prevention of white genetic annihilation, that justifiable homicide is when a white male looks at a black male, could be 44 or 14, and says, I thought he had a weapon. The black male is dead. what is the logic? I mean, is it that black men can see better than white men? Or is there something deeper that is going on? And I say that, indeed, he does have a weapon. Meaning the genitals and the genetic material that can cause white genetic annihilation. And so at the subconscious level, in the white brain computer, it could go something like this. He has weapon, can annihilate me. Must create weapon, can do same thing. So this is the front view of the male genitalia. This is the lateral view. Turn that around 90 degrees and we have this. What is that? A gun. And what does the culture call it? Give that man an A. The great equalizer. See, nobody ever said what? Making equal to what? If he has genetic material that can cause my annihilation, then this becomes my weapon, can do same thing. And so that weapon is worn what? At the level of the genitals. Are you with me, Claire? Let us look further at the culture. What does the culture like to take into its system? What does the culture eat and drink? Why is chocolate considered erotic? See, black people don't call chocolate erotic. But white people, oh, it's so dark and rich. You see, or the television commercial will say, Folgers, I can't get started in the morning until I have some Folgers in my cup. And then they show you a white lady in a white cup and some dark brown coffee. All of the favorite drinks in the white supremacy system and culture are dark brown. Chocolate, coffee, tea, Coke, Pepsi. When I was in Germany a long time ago, 1957, the favorite candy of the German people was some dark chocolate candy made in the form of little babies, and they called them nigger babies. I mean, maybe that's like Mr. Goodbar. You see, or the white male who played baseball, who was a star, hitting home runs, Babe Ruth, man with the ball and bat. And so they created a candy bar called Baby Ruth, chocolate with nuts. See, I told us, let's get to the bottom of what's going on. No pun intended. See, there are reasons that these symbols are as they are. I didn't create them. I didn't design them. These are dominant symbols within the culture. The only question is, can we decode the symbols and and understand their meaning. Now let's take it one step further. I was in Europe in 1957. That was the year that I graduated from college. And my parents said, Francis, what do you want for graduation? And to this day, I often wondered, how did I happen to answer as I answered? But what I told my parents, I should have said, give me a car. But I told my parents, send me to Germany. I want to live with the German people and talk to German people. And I want to ask them in person, did you know what you were doing to your neighbors who you said were Jews? That was my graduation present from college. My parents did send me to Germany. And I lived with German people. This was 12 years after the Second World War. Nice white people. Francis, come and live in our house. But when I asked them, what about your neighbors? Did you know what you were doing? And some of the young people in Germany outside of Frankfurt, they were still, this was 12 years after the war, they were walking around talking about Heil Hitler. And so I would ask them, you're entschuldigen Sie bitte, you know, oh, and we're sorry. And so they would stop for a little while and then they would go at it again. So I understood from that person-to-person experience, on the surface, nice people, but people who participated in or stood by while some of their neighbors were carted away and burned up. The Semites of the Jewish religion lost 1/3 of their world population. And so I said, you know, anti-Semitism. What is this thing? What is this all about? I know it about racism as it relates to black people, but anti-Semitism, got to get to the bottom of this. So my brain confused, you know, I looked in the dictionary and looked in the encyclopedia and read, and still wasn't getting you read the dictionary. A Semite is someone who speaks a Semitic language. Now, a 5-year-old will tell you that's not much of a definition, defining something with the same word. So I said, oh no. Looked at that word and looked at that word, and my brain computer said, oh, S-E-M-I-T-E spells Semite, and S-E-M-I is the Latin prefix for what? Half. Half what? Half black and half white. Because Israel is in Africa. And Hitler said, if you are a Semite, you are going to wear a yellow scarf, because that is the color of a mulatto. Just like if you're homosexual, you're going to wear a pink scarf. See, now this isn't funny. This is tragedy under white supremacy. But I said, oh, now I understand. This is, now we're up to 1969. I said, oh, okay. Mass level destruction of people. Because Hitler said this is a white supremacy state. Your ancestors came from Africa. They were colored people, so some of you look very white. That's why I want to know who was your grandmother and who was your great-grandmother. And who was your great-great-grandmother? Because miscegenation will get rid of some of the melanin. Albert Einstein was described as swarthy with frizzy hair. Hitler and company, the Nazi party was very, very small. But the number of German people and European people and American people, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when Semites asked for help, well, I'm sorry. Oh, we didn't hear in time. Oh, it wasn't much we could do. No, Hitler said if we have this contamination, there will be white genetic annihilation. And we don't want white genetic annihilation. And these people who have lost a lot of their color, we can't quite always tell who they are. They might sneak in some color. And so we'll refer to them as sneaky. And we will also refer to them as viruses. And we will also refer to them as tier mensch. That means animal people. And that's the same terminology that they use when they say underclass in this society. So I said, well, wow. Now I begin to understand that. Another dimension of white supremacy. South Africa. Oh no, there's 30 million black people and 4 million white people. We can't allow them to have one man, one vote. I mean, can't you see? That would cause white genetic annihilation. Or as they say, we will lose our national identity. And Mr. Mandela, if you insist upon it, we will put you in jail for 27 years. I was giving a discussion at the University of Maryland, maybe about 9 months ago. This was a class of about 30 people, one black student in the class. It was a graduate school of social work, and the topic was racism. Dr. Welsing, come and talk about racism. So I gave this discussion about racism. 3 hours of discussion, 1 hour question and answer. So a white student said, Dr. Welsing, did you ever think that you might be killed? Well, who was thinking about that? Well, I mean, this is a very frank discussion. I know that you haven't asked us for anything. You see, because I understand. In other words, if this is reality, if this is the case, when I travel, I talk to white people. I'm polite. They're polite. I say, do you want your children to be colored? Do you want your grandchildren to be colored? Do you want your great-grandchildren to be colored? Do you want your great-great-great-great-grandchildren to be colored? And they're very polite. But what do they say? No. So I say, I respect that answer, but if you mean that, it means that you have to do certain specific things with the specifics on the planet Earth. Tiny minority, genetic recessive, surrounded by black, brown, red, and yellow people. That means that you have to think about doing certain specific things to make certain that there is not white genetic annihilation. How many people saw the Time magazine article, I guess, a couple of months ago? What will we do by the year 2000 in this area of the world alone, when the majority of the people are going to be black and Asian and Hispanic? What will we do? See, now I'm going to say, well, why can't we live in justice and peace? Dr. Martin Luther King was a great social scientist who believed in justice. And he said, non-violence. I think this is the answer to the so-called race problem. Non-violence, going towards people with love. And someone who's classified himself as white killed Dr. Martin Luther King. What was the logic? Well, gosh, if we all loved one another, and we moved from agape to the erotic, what would happen? White, genetic, so he had to be killed. Malcolm X said the bullet, he had to be killed. Because of the limitless white genetic survival. So understanding that, and then I said, oh wow, I understand the people who say, well, I'm a KKK. I remember the Ku Klux Klan. And I believe in putting a cross on black people's lawns and setting it on fire. What's the significance of the cross? I said, this is the problem. And the brain will make a simple abstraction, and we have that which is right. So when I set that on fire on a black man's lawn, that's just like one of those communications that Mr. Pollard read. Get rid of you, or something like that. Meaning what? Castration, death. And I said, oh, look at the swastika. Take the little wings off of it, and we have another cross. And then we're back here again. The concern is white genetic survival. So how does all of this play out in day-to-day living? See, somebody on one of those flyers had something about crime and welfare and drugs and all of this and the black people. You know, the Germans used to accuse the Jewish people of having viruses and spreading typhus, and they were the cause of all the problems that white people had, and so therefore we were justified in killing them. And over here with the welfare and the crime, and look at the ghettos, and look at the ghettos in Europe, and the Jews in the ghettos here. And they're subhuman, and they're this, and they're that. And we gotta kill them, meaning we've gotta survive. But let's look how it plays itself out. If there is to be white genetic survival, there has to be destruction of black men in particular. I come from the District of Columbia. We have a population of close to 700,000 people. 70% of the people are black. This is November, what day is it today? 8th. November the 8th, we've had 400 plus murders. And they talk about the murder capital of the world, of the United States. Black people killing each other. Now what people don't talk about is white supremacy doing white genetic survival, conscious or unconscious. Says that the black male is going to have a very hard time getting a job and getting employment. And he is going to be underemployed. And so when he goes to marry and make family, and one person cannot get a job and move forward, and these people split up, or if this person can't get a job, think of all the black men that are unemployed, and they can't get jobs. Now figure, Are they supposed to stand on the street and starve to death? Are they? So then somebody comes along, because black people do not manufacture any chemicals. Black people do not manufacture any plastic bags that drugs are sold in. Black people do not manufacture any guns or any weapons. So if they come to black people, they are coming from someplace. So somebody is saying, well, if you're not going to stand on the street and starve to death, now you can deal in these drugs. And you can make some income temporarily selling drugs and killing yourselves and killing one another. Somebody is saying that. In the white supremacy system and culture, you know, one of the most popular forms of literature is the murder mystery. Who done it? See, somebody is killing. Who done it? 90% of what occurs on television is killing and killing and killing and guns and killing and killing. And somebody says 2 Live Crew is obscene. Killing is obscene. The culture that is concerned about its genetic survival will be the culture of the gun. Everybody has to have not one gun, but many guns. You go to the average black person's home, they don't have gun racks in their home. Don't know anything about guns. I never had a relative that had a gun. But guns, and we must have guns and right, and we got to defend ourselves from the Indians, we got to defend ourselves from the Africans. But as white supremacy plays itself out and the black man is unemployed, then the black female is forced to be breadwinner and to provide the emotional supports of children, and that breaks down. See, like white females, since the divorce rate is increasing in the white population and the white female tries to be a single parent, that begins to be very, very, very difficult. For male children, white male children without fathers as models will be in difficulty. But because of the level of unemployment and underemployment that impacts on black males in the context of the system of white genetic survival, we have epidemic levels of male unemployment. We have epidemic levels of single-parent families. Now, some people say, oh, the black family, I mean, it's so pathological. And, no, the black family is a target of the dynamic of racism and the dynamic of white supremacy. And so when you have epidemic levels of males without fathers, then you're going to have young people collecting themselves in gangs, and because they really are depressed. They're depressed and distressed without male models, without understanding, without seeing a future. The statistics are that large numbers of young black men are projected to never have jobs in this culture. Never in the course of their lives. What are they supposed to do? But all of that will cause one to be depressed. And if one is depressed and somebody has mood-altering substances that they have a supply in the community of oppressed people, then yes, they're going to start using drugs, taking drugs and selling drugs. So we have what? Epidemic levels of drug use. And I'm not making excuses for black people, because what I counsel black people, now that we have decoded, now that we are understanding white supremacy, it should be clear that if indeed we are to respect people in terms of what they say about themselves, if people say, well, we must survive genetically, And if we help you, then that will cause our genetic annihilation. Especially with white females saying ideal mate is tall, dark, and handsome. So we can't help you. That means that black people have to solve their own problems. Non-white people on the planet have to solve their own problems. Knowing what has been defined by white people as their own survival necessity. You see, but to go back to a situation like this, if you have one parent in the family trying to be breadwinner and trying to provide the emotional support of children, and children don't get all of their emotional support, then they will become obsessed with sex, and then you end up with early sexual acting out, and you end up with teen pregnancy. There's an article in the paper today about the number of young white females that are having sex at early ages, and I would say it is probably related to two parents working and children feeling that they are not getting their emotional needs met. And not only that, the white supremacy system and culture is obsessed with sex. I say because of the disturbance of not being able to make color, and so most of what you see on the television is sex, 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 and people were rolling around in the bed. Well, what are children supposed to do, whether they're white or black, that watch that all day long? Or movies. Sex, 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 and people jumping in the bed and being preoccupied with genitals. What are they supposed to do? But act out sexually, trying to get some level of human closeness. So I say that this is the way that we get a number of the problems that we are dealing with. And so I say that our situation, we could look at racism and white supremacy like a chessboard. Chess is a nice game. It's a game about power and war. And it's perfect as an analogy about white supremacy. Why so? Well, that's one reason. White side of the chessboard and the black side of the chessboard. For another reason. Because in the game of chess for the last 100 years, white always moves first. Is that right? So that means that white is playing offense, defense, and black has to play what? Defense, offense. So I say that it really is about, the game of chess is about the white king checkmating the black king. For the purpose of white genetic survival. We'll call that WGS. So that if black people can no longer ask for, well, please stop the injustice, or please stop this, if this is a survival course, whether I agree with it or not, and black people on the non-white or the black side of the chessboard have to work out the tactics and strategy for their development. See, I believe that white people should be developed to the highest level of their genetic and constitutional potential. But I also believe that all of the black, brown, red, and yellow people ought to all be developed to their highest level of their genetic and constitutional potential. But you can distort genetic development by social environmental stress or the social environmental stress of racism that seeks to cause inferiorization. But once people of color begin to understand, then I suggest such things as, under the conditions of white supremacy, until it is eliminated, that black people must take on the task of maximal development in the presence of white supremacy, moving towards the neutralization and the ending of white supremacy. So I say no black woman should have a baby before 30. No black man father a child before 35. No more than 2 children no closer together than 3 years apart. Well, gosh, Dr. Welsing, what am I going to do in the meantime? Go to the library and go to school. Learn everything, read everything, become self-sufficient, You see, we'll put up here economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And so we have to understand that on the white side of the chessboard, if they're playing white genetic survival, they will do certain things in all of these areas of activity to what? Checkmate the blacks in general and the black king in particular for the purpose of white genetic survival. That may include chemical warfare called cocaine and crack. It may include biological warfare called AIDS. Why not? This is nothing new. The Native Americans were given smallpox. The Center for Disease Control in Atlanta and the U.S. Public Health Service designed the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Take 400 black men who you diagnose as having syphilis. Tell them they're being treated for syphilis. But we're actually not treating them. We're going to let them die, and then we're also going to let them transmit syphilis to their families. That didn't go on for 1 year. That went on for 40 years. 40 years. In full knowledge. So when somebody says, oh, how could you say that HPV? You see, another reason that I say that is when the virus came about, what was one of the first things that was seen? Africa. Now, this virus came from Africa. Now, these are scientists from the National Institutes of Health. The green monkey in Africa. Now, we think perhaps some of the African people may have had sex with the monkey. Or they ate the monkey, or the monkey bit them. So when my brain computer said, well, wait a minute. The first human beings on the planet were black people in Africa. And presumably the green monkey has been there for a very long time. Why the sudden appearance of this strange virus? That simply does not compute to the scientific mind. And because I understood that, and because I understood Germany, and I recommend for people's reading, because some people have a very difficult time computing certain things, I recommend the book Nazi Doctors by John J. Lipton. Read it. Great German scientist who decided to participate in the destruction of people that they said they're not white. We are ridding the country of people who are not white. The white genetic survival mindset. Read. See, read. And because I understood, or thought I understood, I said, this doesn't compute. This is not even being handled in the terms of the public health management of infectious disease. I was in London. You turn on the television and every other second practically there's some commercial about AIDS and be careful and protect yourself. Not so in this area of the world. In fact, they were saying, well, it's too bad it's some people in the ghettos that we simply will not be able to reach, and I know they'll be dying in vast numbers when we can't reach them. That doesn't compute. It simply didn't compute. I hope I'm wrong. But when the Semites of the Jewish religion were being destroyed in Europe, some of them got some word, wait a minute, they're not taking us away to some place where there are jobs and housing. Some of the people got some information and they said they're killing us. And other people said, don't be preposterous. Why, that's preposterous. Nobody would do it. No. Oh, no. We're German. No. Oh, nobody would do anything like that. Go and read. Read about the Wannsee Conference, where German governmental officials sat down, conference table, tea and sandwiches, and detailed how they were going to destroy 11 million people. So read. See, read. Black people, read. White people, read. And then you don't have to, well, who is this Dr. Welsing? What does she know? Read. See, read and then do some mirror studies. It means look in the mirror and get to know self. Study self. Presume not God to span. The proper study of mankind is man. See, study self. And because I say, wait a minute, this does not compute, and I don't dismiss information from my computer. And so I said, well, you know, this could be biological warfare. I mean, look at all the talk. Saddam Hussein has got biological weapons. He's going to have chemical. Well, is he the only person in the world that makes chemical and biological weapons? Or are other people already have amassed chemical arsenals, biological arsenals? So because I thought, wait a minute, this does not make sense. And before 1987, I had never read a formal text on chemical and biological warfare. But in 1987, I was going to a jewelry store, parked my car in front of a small bookstore that I had never been in Washington. And so I said, oh, let me look at this interesting bookstore. And I walked into this bookstore, looked around, walked to the back of the bookstore, and there on the shelf was a small book entitled A Survey of Chemical and Biological Warfare, monthly reviewed Cress, written by some people in Britain, John Cookson, C-O-O-K-S-O-N, and Judith Nottingham, published in 1969. The little book was $3.95, so I said, oh, I think I'll look at this, see what this book has to say. I took that little paperback book home, it had about 400 pages, and just happened to sit on my bed and flip the book open to page 321. And lo and behold, see, I believe there are forces that are outside of man. Those people who are religious say God works in mysterious ways, his and her wonders to perform. Right there on the printed page was a discussion of vervet monkey disease. Now, thank God for a little bit of knowledge of Latin. Vervet is Latin for green. I said, I can't believe this. Right there on a book published in 1969. Vervet monkey disease. Now that was the same African green monkey that the Africans were supposed to have had sex with. And what did the paragraph say? A disease unlike any other organism can become an infectious disease in man, can be venereally transmitted, candidate for biological warfare. Right there on the printed page, not printed by Francis Welsing. And so I told people, I gave a lecture in New York, I said, go and buy as many copies of this book as you can and share it. And so the black people were going to the publishing house in New York, and the first thing they were told was, first they didn't really know what was in the book. The publishers didn't. And then the people were told only one copy per person, and then they were being told you have to sign your name to get a copy. And I challenge you to try to find the book today. Unless it's in your library, it might be. You cannot acquire the book today. So I said, this is significant. And inasmuch as there are Semites in the Jewish religion who say, never again, there would be no reason to say never again unless you thought it could come again. And so when I say, well, now why would somebody get upset if a black person talked about the possibility of something happening to black people? All the people who are supposed to be sympathetic to a discussion of the Holocaust aspect of white supremacy. So I just say this is very, very interesting. And I would like very much more than anything else for somebody to say, see, Francis, you were wrong. But the Holocaust wasn't proven until 1945. It had been going on since 1933. They couldn't prove it until the war was over and all the bodies were piled up. And so when people go around, oh my goodness, we're going to have 50 million dead in Africa alone, I said, no, no, no. This is not an act of nature. But this may be an act, consciously or subconsciously determined. If there is a fear on the part of a minority of people who are fearful of their genetic annihilation and still cannot talk about white supremacy. Oh, the Klan, they're the white supremacists. Or the Nazis, oh, they're the white supremacists. No. It was the majority of the German people who went along with what the Nazis were saying. The nice people who went along with David Duke. And the nice people who went along with Jesse Helms. White gorilla. They found it in Africa. Does anybody remember that? It was written up in National Geographic, Time Magazine, Life Magazine, New York Times newspaper. This is in the late 60s. A farmer in Spanish Equatorial Africa, the white farmer, had a banana plantation, and he spotted this adult gorilla raiding the banana plantation. So it was something black, so he of course got his equalizer. He killed this gorilla, and he went up to the gorilla and found that it was a female adult gorilla, and attached to this adult gorilla was a baby white gorilla. It was a little albino gorilla, but that is what white skin is. It's a form of albinism. And so the little baby gorilla had pink skin, blue eyes, and like platinum bone fur. And so the cry went out all over the world's first white gorilla. Wonderful, wonderful. And so if you want to understand the white supremacy mindset, see, you can go and check this and read it in National Geographic. What do you think they did with baby white gorilla. Well, I can't quite hear all of you, but I'll tell you. See, first there was all of this outcry about the world's first white gorilla, wonderful, wonderful. And then it stopped. It just came to an abrupt halt. And so the first thing that I thought was, oh my goodness, if they realized that this cold black higher primate gave birth to this Scandinavian baby gorilla, that this is how this would explain, you know, the higher primate man. And so I said, oh, they're going to get rid of that little baby gorilla. But that wasn't what happened. They took a little baby gorilla to a zoo in Barcelona, Spain. And this just intrigues me. What do you think they did there? No, that's the genetic recessive trait. They made it. That was the only one, and so if they made it with the dominant, you get a black gorilla. Okay. Now, if you had a lot of mating so that you ended up with a lot with genetic recessive, and he would finally put the recessive together and get white. No, they designed a gorilla IQ test. Which I say is absolutely marvelous. See, I would say, take your little baby gorilla home, teach it some manners, and help it grow up. So that's a black person response. No, they designed the gorilla IQ test. And they got a little baby black gorilla of the same age. And so this would be an opportunity to further demonstrate white genetic superiority. And so what do you think the scientists found out?
Black and smart.
How many people say that they found that both the gorillas had the same intelligence? This is the liberal group. How many people say that they found that the baby white gorilla had the highest intelligence?
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
How many people say they found the baby black gorilla had the highest intelligence? Black loses that. Okay. This is what they found, and you can read it yourself. They found that the baby black gorilla was first in every test.
What?
Please. Don't be biased. But they said that that wasn't acceptable. Little baby gorilla got all these A's, and that just didn't compute. So they said, well, what must have happened is the sunlight got in the eyes, in the blue eyes of the baby white gorilla, and he couldn't see the text. See, I think that's marvelous. And then they went further. They put the little baby white gorilla and the little baby black gorilla, they set them in front of mirrors. M-I-R-R-O-R-S. And they found that the baby white gorilla got all, frightened and upset about his image. See, but that made me like white people. Ooh, I look so pale. Ooh, God. See, I tell white people, look, don't degrade your color. See, look in the mirror, learn how to respect yourself exactly as you are, because if you respect yourself, you will respect me. If you degrade yourself, you will degrade me. But then they found that the baby black gorilla just looked in the mirror and started checking out his parts. See, but the fascinating thing is the need to demonstrate or the attempt to prove white genetic superiority is not sufficient to say, well, gee, the little black girl passed the test first. That's interesting. No, something must be wrong. See, that's white supremacy mindset and the mindset that I'm talking about for white genetic survival. One other thing and then we'll stop. How many people have heard the expression motherfucker? See, I always tell this because my mother, see, I grew up in a family, your parents never said any swear words, any curse words. You never saw your parents drink anything. So my mother, now I'm 55 years old. My mother called me up and she said, Francis, I heard that you said that phrase in public. And I didn't really know what she was talking about. And she wouldn't say it, right? So I said, Mother, what? She said, you know that phrase? And I said, no, I really don't know. She said, Maryland farmers. So my computer finally clicked in and I said, Mom, don't worry, don't worry. I said, it is a political expression. What I had done is one day I'd come out of work and I heard all these young people passing, young black people, motherfucker, listen, motherfucker. So my computer clicked in and said, see, I carry my laboratory with me, it's between my two ears. I said, gee, some terminology to be used with such high frequency is got to have significance. See, that's like the ball game. Wait a minute now. This is just not idle activity. See, that's why people don't want the psychiatrist to come to the party. They think, oh, she's analyzing us. See, I click my computer off when I leave my office if I'm not, doing some investigation. So I said, well, I know that the dominant power dynamic is white supremacy. And since that's the dominant thing on the world stage today, the dominant dynamic, I'm not talking about cosmic dynamic, but at the people level. So I said anything that occurs in this dynamic is caused by white supremacy. So motherfucker as language occurs within this setting. So it means something. So my computer just clicked in, well, there are 5 people categories. Man, woman, boy, girl, baby, right? That covers everybody. Under white supremacy, who is the man? If I say, here comes the man you are, give that class an A. The white man. See, if I said, here comes a man, that might be my dad or my uncle or something. But the man, isolating article means the only one, right? So any other male has 4 choices, woman, boy, girl, baby. It was a historic struggle under white supremacy for black males in this area of the world. Don't call me no boy, right? Are you all aware of your history? Yeah. I know this is not February, but... Think of self 1/12 time. Right. 1 month out of the year. was a historic struggle. Black men saying, don't call me no boy. From time to time, white people would slip in. Well, those girls, you know, a 60-year-old girl, help her to her seat, right? So black men said, don't call me no boy. So white supremacy said, okay, well, let's see, you got 3 choices. Woman, girl, baby. And when I was growing up in Chicago, you call a black man a sissy or something like that, you were in trouble. But things have changed a little bit, curlers and earrings and pocketbooks. But see, all of it is political. It's not personal, it's political. See, but baby, how many black women called a black man baby in their time? See, this is liberation hour. Tell the truth and give it away. How many black men have called a woman they sleep with mama? Hey, mama, can I ride with you? Tell the truth. See, truth is liberating. White people, truth is liberating. Black people, truth is liberating. See? Self-respect means don't lie. Don't lie to yourself, okay? Okay, so the brain-computer system. Well, look further. How many black men have called the place where they sleep a crib? Come on, brother. So the brain-computer says, see, this is just the logic. Cold logic. Man who calls another man D-man, calls himself baby, calls a woman he sleeps with mama, calls the place where he sleeps a crib, oh, will call himself a motherfucker. Don't be ashamed. This is political discussion. This is symbolic speech. Symbolic because of the great difficulty. See, just like people who classify themselves as white have difficulty saying, I practice white supremacy. And as quiet as it's kept, non-white people who are victims of white supremacy have a hard time saying, we are powerless under white supremacy in a relative sense. And so when somebody says, hey, what's happening, man? Everything's cool. Everything is not cool. Somebody said that, Louis Armstrong, somebody said, say, Pops, what's happening? He said, the white man is still in charge. You see, but if people don't, at the conscious level, arrive at reality, then the brain computer knows you're going to be in total trouble unless you at some level can try to struggle to deal with it. So, under the conditions of white supremacy, the white man is in charge. See, that's like at the University of Illinois, how many black people are making final decisions about anything? Right. So, I mean, this is, again, this is just a chessboard. Who's one tournament and who's not. Okay, so, under the conditions of white supremacy, non-white people are victims and we're relatively powerless. So, black man as baby, referring to himself as baby, or the woman referring to him as baby and saying he sleeps in a crib, and calling the white man the man, a baby is powerless compared to the man, right? I see the vibe just drop down in here like when people got something to be ashamed of. Oh, say yeah, right. See, like the team who loses the tournament, If they can go in the squadron and say, gosh, we've lost the last 10 terms. Let's play those films and see where are we making our error. What is it that we don't understand? That's the team that's going to be victorious. So bathing prepared for man is relatively powerless. So then my brain computer said, and I wrote a paper called The Motherfucker and the Original Motherfucker and the White Supremacy System and Culture. So I said, well, for black men to have arrived at this symbolic speech indicating powerlessness, there has to be another motherfucker on the scene. Who is it? The shadow knows. Okay. So I said what? Everybody knows by this point in time that human life began in Africa. Black women are the mothers of all mankind, and black men are the fathers. Are you with me, blacks? Yes. Now, white males have had massive levels of sexual intercourse with black women. Massive. Still going on in offices, on desktops, and you name the place. So each time a white male has sexual intercourse with a black woman, and if there is a product, the product is of color, and the white male feels, after having sex with his symbolic African mother, he feels genetically powerless compared to her. Are you with me? And because of that sense of genetic powerlessness, he imposes political powerlessness on the black male, who ends up calling himself baby. Are you all traveling with me? Yes. Shall we go a little bit further? Going further with this concept of human life beginning in Africa, and the first parents see only black people can produce all those colors. We can produce crystal black and produce a mutation to albinism and produce a Scandinavian. And mix the two of them together and have all the colors of mankind in the middle. So what I postulate and theorize is that human life began in Africa. At some point, there was the development of large numbers of albino mutants. And the black people put the albino mutants out, and they wandered north, and that's where we get Europe. B-R-O-P. Now, Western civilization said that its start point was Rome. And who are the mythological founders of the state of Rome? Come on, class, right. Romulus and Remus. And what were Romulus and Remus doing? Suckling on a wolf. And I say, tragically, those were the first foster children. Did you hear what I said? The first foster children. The black parents had put them out because they were supposed to be defective, just like parents do right now today. If there's a major genetic defect, put it in the institution. And so we put the people out. For example, there's a group of Indians in Panama called the San Blas Indians. And their population, the scientists don't understand the reason why, but they are producing a lot of genetic mutations to albinism. And so the first time white investigators saw this, they thought that this was a group of Scandinavians that were somehow amongst these brown people. But no, they were mutations to albinism, white skin, platinum blonde hair, and blue eyes. Okay. Now they would not allow that population to intermix because you would build up those recessive genetic traits, and the people would have a difficult time in the sun. That might have been what the African people thought. But I say it is interesting that if indeed the albino mutants collected in Africa and the population there increased, the people would therefore have skins that were white. And then fascinatingly to me, at a certain point in time, the people came out of Europe and came back to Africa and captured the black people and took them west to America. And then told the black mother, now you put the black baby out there in the field in the box, and you are going to nurse the white baby. Isn't that interesting? And so then we have Aunt Jemima on the pancake box, and Uncle Ben, and Al Joseph talking about, Mammy, I love you, my dear old Mammy, and putting on blackface. See, I say that's fascinating to me. You see, in the same population, instead of saying God is man's best friend, what do they say? The dog and the wolf are both what? Fans. Is that right? I think it's interesting. Maybe it's not true. Something has to explain the patterns of behavior that we see. And instead of playing this game of hating each other and fuming and fussing, no, let's solve the problem. See, let's solve the problem. For example, in the Cress theory, I made the challenge to white behavioral scientists. Help white people become comfortable with their minority status on the planet. Help them become comfortable with their color. Help them learn to like themselves. If they like themselves and respect themselves, they wouldn't be polluting the waters. They wouldn't be killing all the little animals, destroying the rainforest, and wondering how are their own white children going to survive. Not to mention the non-white people. If we kill all the non-white people, then we've destroyed Mother Earth, raped Mother Earth, then how are we going to survive? Let me stop and let you comment and ask some questions. Oh, I tell you what to do like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Okay. I'll be as quick as I can. First off, one correction, anthropologists do not consider Caucasians an albino form of Negroes.
Oh, I know that. I know this is not what white people call themselves, but they would call a white bunny rabbit an albino, a white mouse an albino.
But there is a biological distinction between an albino and a Caucasoid.
No. Albinism, there are variants of albinism. And so the inability to produce pigmentation from the norm. See, the norm on the planet is for people that have skin pigmentation. Now, I say this, you see, this is not my discussion. I'm looking at a group of people that have been constantly saying something is genetically wrong with other people, you see, and focusing specifically on color. Beyond that, looking at themselves and calling themselves pale and trying to get color. So I'm reading back from that point. And white skin is an albinism variant, even though white scientists are not calling themselves that.
That's not actually my question. I found your interpretation of spelling symbols in sports and everything very interesting. And I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Alan Dundee's, and you're also probably familiar with the criticisms of his ideas, which are very similar. I have an example I would like you to interpret in the same manner. In 1985, I lived in the northern frontier district of Kenya, on the Ethiopian border, and I stayed with some Samburu. I had the opportunity to observe one of their ceremonies. They were just dancing around a fire one night. I was the only white person for about 200 miles, and I've probably seen many white people. Their ceremony consisted of them covering themselves with cow dung ash to make them appear white. And they carried, the warriors, the Ilmaran, carried very big spears with them. But for the ceremony, when they were all white, they took out their spears for that specific ceremony, which were even bigger. Now, how would you interpret that ceremony in a non-white supremacist racist manner?
In a non-white supremacist racist manner. I mean, why are they trying to be white?
Exactly.
Well, think about it. I mean, black people here, if I could make 3 pills, so all the non-white people in the planet tomorrow morning could be white, and they all could have straight hair, and they all could have features like white people. You see, because white supremacy as a dynamic has been going on a long time. And you say, well, there are not many white people who are in Africa. How many black people in Africa do you really think do not know that the white man is in charge in Africa? You see, so black people, you know, dyeing their hair blonde, putting in green or blue eyes, the Japanese people trying to cut their eyes so that they would look like white people. So that you're correct, that under white supremacy, the vast majority of non-white people have been taught to hate themselves, and you're right to do it. You see, or the recognition that white represents power, just like I ran through, the man, who is in charge? Or if you took 100 black children and you gave them a choice of $2, and you say, sweetheart, what dollar do you want? The black children would select the $1. Okay, thank you.
One, how would you explain the marriage between a white man and a black woman in light of the concept of white genetic annihilation? And the second question being, can you explain the categorization of Indians from the East as being Caucasoid and their racism amongst themselves?
Okay, well, you said that, what, the black woman and the white male?
She led the concept of white genetic annihilation.
Well, see, whether it's the white male and the black female, or the black male and the white female, under white supremacy, the people who are white are in charge. And if a white person said, I don't know if this is the direction of the question, but if a white person said, well, how can I help end white supremacy? What could I do? One of the things that I would suggest is don't have any sexual contact with a victim of white supremacy. Because what that tends to do, you see, if white people were going around saying, well, we are actually in charge, white people deny that. And so when a white person has sexual intercourse with a black person, it makes the non-white person think everything is groupie. And so the non-white person is in a state of confusion as a result of that. And so if, you know, we all suspend any sexual contact that is going to confuse people under the conditions of white supremacy and say, once we end white supremacy on the planet, everything and, you know, whatever we decide to do at that point, okay. But don't further confuse the non-white people on the planet. And another thing that happens is that sometimes when a white person is having sex with a non-white person under white supremacy, and a non-white person attempts to talk about racism, it'll be the non-white person who gets angry at the non-white person who's talking about racism. They'll say, no, it's no racism. It's no racism, and I don't know why you keep talking about it. You see, now the white person knows that's racism. But the non-white person is set up to argue and debate with a non-white person who talks about racism. So I say that if white people want to help, they would say no sexual contact until the elimination of white supremacy, and if people are anxious to get in bed, then they'll hurry up and solve the problem of white supremacy.
Okay. The direct question is, why would a white male marry a black woman and propagate it, thus furthering white genetic annihilation?
No, because all of the offspring must be victims of white supremacy.
So it doesn't matter.
Huh? So no, the non-white person is a victim of white supremacy, just like no matter what names people play around and talk about the Indians and the subcontinent of India are Caucasoids. Ask them how are they dealt with. They are dealt with as non-white people. Okay? All right. Here we are. Yes, sir.
I wanted to know how you view under the Cress theory the doctrines of the Trilateral Commission, and what do you view the next 10 years as for black and Cubans of color under that report, and maybe some analysis on the
Well, if you're talking about the trilateral, let's not get fancy. I said, let's get the basics. Master 1 + 1 before calculus. And you were only talking about institutions under the system of white supremacy. So any institution under the system of white supremacy has as its ultimate goal objective what? The establishment, maintenance, expansion, refinement of white supremacy. Even educational institutions. See, do educational institutions under white supremacy foster and encourage maximal development and encouragement of students that are classified as non-white? Do they encourage them to come into the institution? In most instances, no. Okay? Fine. Over here, yes.
Back to the subject of AIDS, if you do see the so-called linkage between white supremacy and AIDS, how do you feel about the research going on right now to combat AIDS? Do you feel that that too is dominated by white supremacists, thereby citing them?
Well, you see, that's why I said, I think that AIDS is biological warfare. If it is biological warfare, it would make sense to me about some of the confusion that is going on about what do we do with the drugs. In other words, if there was a disease that descended upon a population and it just came out of nowhere and somebody had a chemical that in some way treated, you wouldn't charge thousands and thousands of dollars. The government would say, no, let's provide anybody. Does anybody have the infection? Come forward, you're treated free of charge. Enough said? All right. Yes, sir.
Before I ask the question, I'd just like to thank you.
Let me say one other thing in response to that question about AIDS. Studying the history of white supremacy in Germany. Before the Semites of the Jewish religion were attacked, who was attacked? The German homosexuals. You see, and they were also put in concentration camps and destroyed. And so my reasoning is that if this is white supremacy playing itself out again, you see, white supremacy is about the fear of white genetic annihilation, so males who appear effeminate or weaker as males will be attacked. And so they were attacked in Germany, and they were attacked first here. I said that the number one target, just like in Germany, that was the war against the Semites of the Jewish religion, and that war was won. The white homosexual was attacked because if it was just non-white people attacked, the non-white people would all, wait a minute. So that there was a cover group, and that was the expendable white homosexual population. And while we're talking about it, what are the two series of smoking objects in the white supremacy system and culture? Anybody? Big brown and small white. Big brown pipes, cigars, Moors. They say they taste better. Small white cigarettes. And what is the white slang word for cigarettes? Fags. Meaning these small white phallic symbols are effeminate in the white mindset, not Welsing mindset, a white mindset, to the point that they will refer to the white valley symbol as Arabs. Okay, yes, sir.
Just want to thank you for all the insight that you brought to me personally tonight. Thank you very much, Dr. Welsing. Your description of the origin of European peoples as being a set of albinos put out of Africa is remarkably similar to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Yaqub and all. Do you attribute any of your thinking to his teachings, or is it just a question of the two of you?
I didn't know that. You see, but it was to me fascinating. See, I was reading from exactly where I started, you see, and looking at it in that way, and then I subsequently learned that this is what was the teaching of the the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. You see, that a scientist produced this population. You see, well, that's also possible. I mean, somebody could, just like scientists, you call them scientists or horse breeders or cat breeders or animal breeders, and they make strains. Scientists make strains of albino, mice, strains of albino bunny rabbits. The white bunny rabbit, albino strain. The white mouse, albino strain. The white rat, albino strain. The white tiger, albino strain. A white student said to me, Dr. Welsing, maybe this is why, as white scientists, we developed the albino research animal. And I said, that's fascinating and that's interesting. Also, we're eating albino turkeys. The big black turkeys or brown turkeys. Now, you look at the turkey farms. They're albino turkeys that have been developed. Okay, yes.
I'd like to go back to the black-white question. You said that the people they don't understand racism, or the white person is more dominant, or that, I don't know.
Go back, slow down, so I can understand.
I want you to explain more to me what you're saying about the black-white relationship.
What aspect of the black-white relationship?
That the white person was doing it as like a piecemeal, or to say that everything's okay. My mom's white, my dad's black. My mom fell in love. It doesn't have anything to do with whatever.
Well, wait a minute. You see, I can understand maybe where you're coming from. But we are on a planet in which there is white supremacy. And so you say, well, my mom is white and my dad is black. So how does white supremacy relate to you?
I do live in a white supremacist society.
Mm-hmm.
I live in a white supremacist society.
Right. So your mom is white, but you are a victim of white supremacy.
What does that have with my parents? I mean, how does that...
It comes about because mom was white, that's recessive. Dad was black, that's dominant. So when white people look at you, because I kind of didn't know from my people, who is this young lady? How does she classify herself? But you can believe me that I'm sure you've had the experience of white people. Oh, where are you from? Have you ever been asked that? Yeah. That means, what is your classification? Because you look a little bit, I know something's not quite right here. You see, but this is not a joke. For example, I spoke several years ago, really a long time ago, at the University of Massachusetts. And so a young woman from Palestine, I talked about racism, white supremacy, please be quiet. And she said, Dr. Welsing, you talk about color a lot. I'm from Palestine. We don't focus on color. And I said, yes, I would imagine that you might not focus on color. Now, if I looked at her from a person my complexion, I would look and say, I wonder, is she Mexican? Is she Puerto Rican? Let me see. See, that would be from my complexion to hers, but she said she was from Palestine, so I'm clear. A mixture of black and
black and white should not have relationships now. Shouldn't be about who you care about. Why does it have to be
I want the world to be like what you're saying, right? Wait a minute. The world is not like that. We have this very serious problem of racism that you yourself have run into. See, once you're classified, somebody says, oh no, she's not white. And so then that you drop into the box of non-white people with the limited opportunity that goes with that. And so it would be wonderful. Martin Luther King said we should all love. But if people who classify themselves as white, for whatever number there are, that are saying we must have white genetic survivors, then that means that you are in trouble, the Semite of the Jewish religion is in trouble, and like the young woman from Palestine, she said, oh, well that explains why when I'm in Europe, people will come up to me who are white, and they will say to her politely, are you French? Now see, that's a polite way of finding out, because they're looking and it's a little dark. So it would be rude maybe to overtly say, are you colored? And so she says, no, I'm not French, I'm Palestinian. And then she said, they say, oh. And she never understood that, oh. And I thought, oh. Say, oh, how wonderful, come on in. Oh means you're non-white, and that's the box you're drawn.
How could you advocate that? How could you say
No. Well, wait a minute. I'm not an advocate of white supremacy.
No, I'm not saying white supremacy, but you said...
No, I'm an advocate of coming to an end. And what happens is that people end up confused when that happens. And they don't really want racism discussed. They just want to talk about love.
My parents have always talked about
love. See, stop taking it personally. The world is filled with non-white people who are victims of white supremacy. I explained. The Semites of the Jewish religion is a population made from black women in Africa and Greek and Roman soldiers causing miscegenation on the northern tier of Africa. Now they wanted to be accepted in Europe, but people kept saying, no, you have genetic material from Africa and we're going to kill you. And so even though mom and dad got together, and see, I would say you don't really like the idea of talking about race. But race is a big problem that has to be solved. And if the non-white people stop being confused and thinking that the bed was going to solve the problem. Because there was a phase when people said, well, the more we get in bed together, there'll be an end to racism. There was no end to racism. Look at all the sex that goes on between black and white people right as we speak. And the problem is bigger than ever. David Duke is walking. You see, so I'm saying that because the victim is confused, the non-white person ends up thinking, no, it's about love. How do you figure? Okay, let me go on and talk to you a little bit later, okay? Where is that? Okay, back over here.
I just want you to comment on the U.S. form or the U.S. common white supremacy. I would like you to comment on the U.S. form of white supremacy as being the 1992 unification in Europe, and how do you feel about that as far as the simple white supremacy?
I wouldn't say it's the newest form, but it's, in other words, it's a strategy to deal with the increasing activity on the part of non-white people that, where it used to be, well, the white people who said they're capitalists and the white people said they're communists and they were fighting like brothers sometimes do. But the more the non-white people in Asia and Africa start moving, wait a minute, forget all of this division. We have to come together and establish a tighter form of white supremacy over the non-white people.
Do you think, would you have that in your mind, kind of a plan of action or anything?
Yes. Number one, begin to understand white supremacy. See, because you're talking about the vast majority, there's a whole country of white people on the planet. And so if all non-white people understood white supremacy, it would stop. One of the major tactics under white supremacy is to divide and conquer. You see, make all these non-white people squabble and fight with each other. You know all the fighting and squabbling that goes on with black people and all the non-white people fighting and killing each other. Divide and conquer. That's the way a minority controls a majority. And so if all the non-white people on the planet understood white supremacy and said we're not going to fight each other anymore, white supremacy would almost be finished. Okay? Yes.
I attended the conference last month in Chicago, Global White Supremacy Conference.
Yes.
And sister there was the news on the AIDS. They said they had a new cure called Kimra that was developed in Kenya by a brother. Then all of a sudden, this guy, white guy in Florida, said, I discovered it first. And they said I think somebody else totally they discovered a cure for it, the same cure. Now that's, to me, that's what lends, credence to what you're saying about it being sort of like a biological warfare. The cure has always been there. And so, like I said, a man in Africa finds a cure. And then also the white man decides, I'll put it out now.
Okay, but I think that, you see, what I monitor, it doesn't matter who discovers the cure. Is whether or not it is shared with the people who are the major victims. And if it's not, then I say, well, there has to be a reason for it. But you don't create a biological weapon and then come up with the answer until the designated number of deaths have occurred. You see what I'm saying? In other words, who discovered it? I mean, that might be the minutiae. The question is how accessible. In other words, if a discovery of something that effectively treated AIDS was discovered in Kenya, and in a very short period of time, the person would revert to HIV negative and feel better for $600 or less, which is what they're quoting. Why doesn't somebody say, my goodness, this is exactly what we need? Come and treat all of these hundreds of people and thousands of people, irrespective of color. Treat the little babies that are dying from AIDS. But when people stand back and they have all these discussions and debates about why we don't do that, which is that, that's just primary level thinking, that this is what one would do. When you don't do that, I say, well, there must be a reason. Does that? Anybody else?
I just want to find out your comment on this.
I'm sorry.
I just want to find out your comment.
Okay, comment. All right. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Dr. Welsing, I thank you for coming back. First of all, I'd just like to know, do you think that white supremacy will be playing itself out in the up-and-coming war in the Middle East through the implementation of selective service, and the drafting of young brothers, into the army to go fight a war for, our white government, in other words, our white government?
Well, I heard that 60% of the troops in the Middle East were black people. I don't have the exact statistics, and that's not what you see on television, so that doesn't tell you very often the story. You see, and, it's not just black people that say it's about oil. People are occupying territory so that, Europe and other groups will have the oil. Or we can't let the Africans have Africa, we need those minerals. So of course we have to occupy. This is ours. We need this. We can't let the Indians stay on this land. We need this.
I'm speaking more so, not only the occupation.
Please be quiet so I can hear you.
Not only the occupation of the whites in Africa, but more so the usage of black troops from America.
That's like on the front line in Vietnam. All the black people were on the front line in Vietnam. You see, it massive numbers out of proportion to their numbers in the society. Okay?
Thanks.
Okay.
Dr. Welsing, you spoke on strategy and tactics for a minute, and you focused on the need for education for us to study. And I just want to pose the question that when the United States made war against the people of Vietnam. They studied and they fought a war of national liberation. And today, apartheid in South Africa is war against 87% of the population of South Africa. So the people are studying, and while they're negotiating, they also have their military organization called the Spirit of the Nation, and they're training the population in guerrilla warfare to defeat the enemy in the war. And my question is that, given that you've given to me sufficient evidence that we're in a war, tons of cocaine being dropped in all of our neighborhoods is chemical warfare. I agree with you. And I also agree that AIDS is intentional genocide. So given that we're in a war, would you also agree that we want to try to win the war and that we don't want to be like the Jews and lose? That studying is one thing and then also trying to win the war is necessary?
Okay. What I recommend is, first of all, for example, one of the critical things that a psychiatrist does in a psychiatric examination called a mental status examination is to find out whether the person is oriented. That means, do they know who they are? Do they know where they are? And do they know what time it is? If the person is disoriented as to time, place, and person, then they are psychotic and they are out of it. Now, I'm talking, you see, we're talking about the basics. We're talking about just defining and analyzing what white supremacy is all about. We have major difficulty in understanding and accepting who we are. You see, just like the Germans said to the Semites of the Jewish religion, you're Semites. And they said, no, we're Germans. And we said, I'm American. I didn't leave anything in Africa. Disoriented as to person, disoriented as to place, disoriented as to time, disoriented as to the dynamic that is on the board. And so we are at the first stage because if you don't get into identity, who you are, and begin to be able to respect who you are, all is lost. So what I'm saying is, here's some exercises. Stop gossiping about one another. See, you're building self-respect. If self-respect is high, then you will have self-defense, whatever that would necessitate. And it's just like the Vietnamese people. Their critical mass of self-respect rose so high that they said that every single one of us must die. The enemy is leaving the land.
Thank you.
You see, but without self-respect, you won't take it. So don't go out blustering, That's what people did in the 60s. And they got blown away that we didn't understand what time it was, what it was, or who we were. So here's some exercises in black mental health and black self-respect. Stop gossiping about each other. Stop name-calling each other. Stop squabbling with each other. Stop cursing one another. See, no bitches, no motherfuckers, and all that stuff. Stop snitching on one another. Stop being discourteous. Stop being disrespectful to one another. I'm just scribbling, but you can hear me. Stop stealing from one another. Stop robbing one another. Stop fighting one another. Stop killing one another. Stop using and selling drugs to one another. Stop throwing down trash where black people live, work, and play. Don't throw it anyplace. Stop making black children believe they can be adequate mothers and fathers as children. And last but not least, stop pretending that white supremacy does not exist.
Yeah, I had a couple of things to say. First of all, I wanted to point out a couple of things that I learned from this university. Anyone out here who doesn't really believe that white supremacy
exist. You can look at any textbook in this university. History 112, you look at that history textbook.
Please, people, that's called being courteous to one another.
The racism is blatant. Okay, not only is the racism blatant, but in parts of the book that outlines the depth of white supremacy and ways that it was put into force. In the book they talk about the Industrial Revolution and the necessity of getting colonies, necessity of building up a white supremacy attitude. They also talk about using opium intentionally, feeding that drug into the Chinese society, the exact same way that they're feeding that drug into our societies right now in this country. So that white supremacy is here, it's present, and they're using it every day against us. The other thing the question that I want to ask is, because this white supremacy does exist, is it an evidence of how bold, how sure of themselves they are, that they can actually put it into a textbook and show you, put it in front of your face, that we are doing this to you? Or are they just flaunting the fact that they have us so well that we aren't going to see it?
Well, you see, if you frame a people and you stress a people and you inferiorize a people and you make them hate themselves and dislike themselves, then the behavior will be by and large against the interest of self. You see, and so they'll turn black people on to things like living color and have those despicable images of black men on the television, and people will be laughing at it and say, oh, they're making a whole lot of money. You see, all kinds of things, like most of the images of black males on television are very, very negative. If you're not seeing somebody in handcuffs, following a drug arrest or following a murder, that's a good 90% of what you see. You see, but if people don't understand the significance of that, or they just go along with it, or for example, I even look at Sesame Street. See, I say that is a program for non-white children. So you have a big silly goose, and then you have garbage cans, dilapidated houses, and little dark creatures coming out of garbage cans. Now, for white children, you have Good Morning, Boys and Girls. This is Mr. Rogers. Today, we are going to go to the ice cream factory and see how ice cream is made. You see, not all that silly stuff that is supposed to be so-called for minority or non-white children is played out in many different. Just look at the ads. You see little white children in the middle of the ad, and little black children on the periphery, and you might see a little black boy with his hat turned around backwards and his eyes buffed to the ceiling. You will never see him giving a paragraph of articulated information. So that the summation of that is he's not intelligent enough to speak. But the little white child, the little white boy, the little white girl, particularly the little white boy, but also the little white girl, they can speak intelligently. You see, so white supremacy is played out. Go to the movies, any movie you want to pick. Driving Miss Daisy, go any movie you want to pick. Color Purple, go to any movie you want to pick. And as long as non-white people do not understand white supremacy, what it is and how it works, then they too will become participants. You see, like the Nazis, they got Jewish leadership. They helped line up and select the first people to go to camp. They didn't understand what was really going on. So now we're going to understand, we're going to spend a whole lot of time in the library, almost no time in parties. Where's the party? Where's the library?
There's no doubt there's racism in the world, racism in America, and it is evil, it's ugly. But I think that, as far as I can see, racism stems from a belief that to be different is to be inferior. Now, of course, that's a false belief. I think that's really the root of racism. Some people may be racist. Some racism may stem from concern about white genetic annihilation. But I guess I can't see how you can justify your claim that concern about white genetic annihilation is the root of all racism. I guess I just can't see how you justify it.
See, I say I define racism as white supremacy. For example, somebody said, oh, there's black racism. Black people say they don't like white people. I say that is an opinion. Black people in the lives of white people. Look at structure after structure, whether you're talking about housing, whether you're talking about who gets a loan in the bank. See, when people know that when the black face shows up, you say the apartment has been rented. Or you say, I'm sorry we're not dispensing loans. Or you say, I'm sorry, Mr. Black, we have to let you off. You know, we have to release you from the job. Or when Mr. Black trains Mr. White on the job, and then Mr. White becomes Mr. Black's supervisor. See, over and over again, there are all of these patterns. See, a white person, if you wanted to investigate racism, you would go around and you would say, you would go in the various administrative buildings right here at the university. And you look around and you say, well, this is interesting. How many black people are in here making decisions? See, then you have to explain, well, why are they not here? Your brain might go in the direction, well, they're not, they would be here, but they're not qualified. You see, or they're genetic inferiority. The reason that I see so many white people in different places and doing different things is because they're genetically superior to the colored people. That's just like the Japanese. The Japanese were talked about by white people in early contact, and these people are not even human. They're so much below the level of human beings that we cannot possibly relate to them as human beings. And they don't even come up to any level of the white population. You see, so you have to, it's difficult. I guarantee you it's difficult. It's difficult if a white person wants to look white supremacy in the face. It is 100 times, 1,000 times, a million times more difficult to be convinced. You see, so we have to, travel from Washington, D.C., go and sit in the Congress. So why would you leave mostly white people sitting there? This is fascinating. Or do you conclude that they don't have the intelligence to be there? Or are people behaving in such a way as to prevent it? You see, even for example, if you just monitor, sit down with friends who are white, listen to the conversation about people of color. Listen to the things that are said that are supposed to be just having fun. See, this is what the non-white people have to deal with. That would be, and it's up to the person who is the victim of a process. Look at all the little black babies who have babies. Look at all the underachievement in schools. All the dropping out of school. Look at the unemployment rate of black male adolescents compared to white male adolescents. So you got to be willing to look at that and say, hey, this is interesting. Or you look at the resources of the world. In whose hands are the resources in it? All the diamonds, all the tin, all the uranium, all the gold, all the rubber. You see? So you have to say why. And if it's not genetics, then what is it? Yes.
Do you believe the white supremacy?
Oh, indeed.
Good question. How long do you... Yes.
It depends. It depends on the people. But I say that we're really talking about self-respect. You see, if people start respecting themselves, they will start taking seriously what is happening in their lives. And they will take seriously what is happening in the lives of people who are a reflection of themselves. And they will say, this is unacceptable. I've seen a lot of little black children who don't have their mothers and fathers in their home, or when they flash the starving children in Ethiopia, the starving children in the Sudan, little black people that look exactly like the people who came out of the concentration camps in Europe. You see, the minute that people of color begin looking at that and say, no, this is unacceptable. This is not a reflection of justice on the planet. And we intend to have justice, and let's hurry up and get to the text.
What do you think it would have to say?
Why? Because we have to understand what's happening. That's why we need to hear what's happening. From now on, black people will need to say, hey, you do know what's happening. Okay? Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I want to discuss a different angle. First of all, could you give the citation of that book for the monkey virus, where you discovered the monkey virus?
The survey of biological warfare.
Yes.
John Cookson and Judith Lyman, Montgomery Cress, 1969.
You don't have to have a page.
Huh?
321.
Page 321, 322. On page 110 and 111, y'all see this back.
At the bottom of the page.
A manufactured virus, but this has kind of given the answer. I think it's well known that the CIA has a large stock of chemical components, deadly viruses like meningitis, and they have had for years. In fact, when the Russians started to negotiate for arms control, one of the first things they negotiated about was this store of chemical weaponry that we had. They wanted them to destroy all that.
Okay, let's not say CIA will say that those persons who are interested in establishing, maintaining, and refining.
Okay. Let me go on to the second part, which is an alternative view and perhaps an answer that you've been asking for all night. I have to admit that I am a product of racial genetic purity as opposed to, let's say, supremacy. And I say this because even though I was born in Chicago, my parents, and more particularly my grandparents, were from the Deep South and from the Old South, if that's possible to conceive. I didn't grow up in that environment, but I heard a lot about it from my grandmother as a child growing up, including the Tar Baby, which was the story that was read to me, and other Uncle Remus tales and whatnot, perpetuating certain mythologies. From my point of view, it seemed as if that the Southern culture, let's say the family culture, in that culture, when people married, and they were very concerned about racial purity, the purity of the stock from which their family came. And so certain things in the counties of Virginia and Georgia, certain things like education, economic status, other things like that, were not as important as who is your family? What is the name of your family? That would be the first question that would be asked. Okay. So in other words, this racial purity thing is a factor even in the white community. All right. Now, going back to, let's say, Germany, and you've lived in Germany, and perhaps I'd really be interested in your comments on this, because it's a little different angle. There's always been in Europe, particularly among the what do they call it, the classes of kings, monarchs, and so on, a real desire to marry within the social status of kings and queens. The queen of some Frenchmen married a Russian, and so on, and there was a lot of interaction. Take, for example, the Habsburgs family. They were very concerned with keeping their purity, and it really didn't have anything to do with the ruling class. All right. Now, my solution then is this: the reaction to that was two things. First of all, the way people reacted was the rise of Masonry, which was a secret and banned clique that believed in the brotherhood of man, and also the Enlightenment, Goethe and so on, who also believed in the equality of all men. Isn't that really the solution? After the whites who want to remain genetically pure put all their sperm in sperm banks and, fix up their sperm to be 6'8" like myself, after that whole sort of white skin thing is taken care of, which it ultimately will, I guess, then isn't it really tolerance and equality that we're talking about?
Well, you see, in other words, there's been a major discussion, a lot of things that I talk about. But there's been a lot of discussion about tolerance, but no dealing with the reality of white supremacy. See, white supremacy is what we have not talked about and dealt with. And so when you come along as a person who might classify themselves as white, and you say, don't focus on white supremacy, Dr. Welsing, let's talk about, isn't tolerance the answer? Where white supremacy is even critical within the white group itself. How do white people rank themselves? They rank themselves from Northern Europe on down to the Mediterranean. You see, and the top white people are what? White skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes. And then we get down to the people who got dark hair like yourself. You see, but that's not considered the top of the line. You see, and the reason that they have dark hair is because of what? Genetic mixture from Africa. For example, some white person did a study of the Senate in the United States, and they found that of the white group of people, the people who wield most power are who? Blonde hair and blue eyes. Right.
Right.
So we're talking about white supremacy. For example, recently on the Phil Donahue show, there was a discussion of people who were members of the Klan, the Nazis, and so they were talking about white supremacy, and they had their little children, little 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds who were saying, I hate niggers, I hate niggers. You see, and Phil Donahue, you're teaching your little children that, and you spend a whole lot of time just stroking. Look at these beautiful children, stroking the little blonde hair children. Now that was white supremacy in and of itself.
See, but that's not really white supremacy. That's an intolerance of people who are different from yourself.
Let me just say this. If your analysis works for the problem that you're dealing with, fine. White supremacy is the problem that I'm dealing with. And so I have to make the analysis and deal with that. And just beware. You see, if a person doesn't want, it's like playing ball games or playing chess, and you see that your opponent has decoded the move that you're about to make, you would try to fake them out and make them go off in the wrong direction. Don't ever make a non-white person deflect away from the direction of white supremacy if you want to get
I think the problem that we both share
well, no,
is one of the factors. No, I think the problem that we both share is that some people don't believe that we're human. Okay. And if you don't think somebody's human, you don't mind killing them. And I think it would be interesting to note that it wasn't until Reagan came into power that we had the AIDS epidemic and the crack. Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to know, you said earlier that white supremacy was a problem that black people have to solve themselves.
Wait a minute, I can't.
You said earlier that white supremacy was a problem that black people have to solve themselves, or people of color have to solve themselves. What I want to know is, do we not elicit any assistance from white people, or do we just be very selective in the assistance that we do get from them?
Well, you see, we've been here almost 400 years in this area of the world. We've been begging for help. Please stop. Don't do it. So when we still have a problem, you have to make a conclusion. See, I say that black people, non-white people in this area of the world have basically been looking to white people to stop doing what they're doing. And I say, wait a minute. Listen to what white people are saying is important, priority importance for them. And if indeed, as I have decoded, it is white genetic survival, then it is pointless to ask them to commit genocide on themselves or suicide. So who does the answer fall to? And anybody who's not willing to solve the problems that they have, they don't deserve justice. So don't let that be us. Okay? Yes.
Okay, I guess I have two questions. For when you said that to end the racial problems of today, that you must end white supremacy on the planet, I'd like to know what that means. End white supremacy on the planet. What does this mean? What does it mean?
Okay, that means stop people who classify themselves as white from carrying out the destructive behavior that they have historically carried out against people that they classify as non-white. Now, I didn't say kill all white people. I didn't say be mean or rude or disrespectful. But it's getting into the psyche and understanding why people do what they do. If you understand why somebody does what they do, you can neutralize that behavior. You see, if it's divide and conquer, you say, no, we don't do that.
Okay, then my second question is, who is the white supremacist? What is white supremacy?
Did you get one of the definitions?
Well, the reason I ask this is because... The reason I ask this is because my understanding of the thing I understood from your talk was that every Caucasian person is a white supremacist. And I will not deny the existence of white supremacy. However, I do not feel that every white person, every Caucasian person is this white supremacist.
I see, well, I know every white person. See, I don't know every white person. You see, and don't play with the word Caucasian because Mexicans are called Caucasian, but white people say they're not white. Indians, black as crystal black, are called Caucasians because they're black-skinned people with straight hair, but they are dealt with as non-white people. And so I don't know every person. You know, I'm one person, I don't know, but I have to say I know a one John Brown. You see, and I don't see. How many white people do you see talking about we must end white supremacy? You see, and so any person who classifies themselves as white, for example, and takes advantage of having things, using things, doing things that people of color cannot do, they are supporting white supremacy. One last question. Who is it? Yes, sir.
We all know that the Latino population in this country is increasing rapidly and is competing with the African American population. Being a Latino student in this university, there has been some tensions between the Latino students and African American students. My question to you is, of me and the Latino students and African American students on this campus, what can we do to get rid of those tensions and start working together against white supremacy?
Okay, first of all, I say for all people classified as non-white to understand what white supremacy is and to not fall into the trap, because you see, white supremacy will say, well, wait a minute, we've got all these black people in this area of the world who are developing increasing consciousness. So what we need to do is we need to bring in some Hispanics and Asians as a buffer. And the Hispanics and Asians will be saying, we're not black. And so they will be, just like you started out, the competition with black people. See, I don't feel competition with you if you say you're Hispanic. I don't feel competition with so-called Asian people and any non-white person that falls victim to it. I'm a little lighter, and so therefore I'm going to position myself over the black people because on the hierarchy of acceptance, I have less melanin or more miscegenation. Even though I am functionally not classified as white, then that's just playing out the victimization of white supremacy. You see, and so non-white people have to learn, just like black people and Korean people squabbling. White supremacy will try to promote that. You see, will try to promote the difference. Okay, you Hispanics and you blacks, you all fight it out. You Hispanics and you Asians fight it out. You blacks and you Asians fight it out and squabble. We'll put you on television and you all can yell and scream, tear up each other's stores or whatever. If non-white people become sophisticated and self-respecting and they want to achieve justice and peace on the planet, they will say, we're not going to squabble and fight with each other. We're going to work together to bring justice, which necessitates ending white supremacy on the planet and trying to move this planet towards justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to allow just one last question from Bill Kerr because he's been waiting so very patiently tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Paulo. Many people have drawn from some of the theories discussed in such books as The Iceman Legacy and others that there's an actual link between white supremacy and sexism because until you had aggression-based cultures, which was the culture that people were forming raiding parties and coming down from the north, women were considered on par until suddenly you needed a purely aggression, purely strength-based culture. And do you find any validity in that at all?
Well, first of all, I said that sexism is a relationship between white males and white females. Because, for example, if you ask black people in this area of the world, who is the dominant person in your home, it's the mother. And it's black women many times who have more opportunity than black men. And so I said that the sexism thing is not playing itself out with black people. But if the white female says, my ideal mate is not called white and handsome, my ideal mate is called dark and handsome, then if she is not held under the control of the white male, she herself will participate in white genetic annihilation. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Welsing. University of Illinois, thank you. Appreciate you very much.
I turned the heat up, Nick. It's freezing.
Guess what I found out?
What'd you find out?
Two of the front doors were usually black and white.
Aha! Oh, maybe that's why there's colors in here.
All I want to say is,